Jesus to the cross, and yet still that price was paid. Such an amazing love from the Father for us, these wretched creatures. And I just thank you so much and praise you so much for those things and all the things we don't know what to say thank you for. Open up our eyes, open up our ears, open up our hearts this morning. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated. I had to run get my mic real quick. I forgot. So, until just a couple of minutes ago, I looked around until Marcello came in, I looked around and every man in this room had followed one of God's commands. Marcello, I'm not getting on you. You'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. But what I was thinking was we had done pretty good. Say, well, what command is that? Well, Genesis 1:26 and 27, a lot of you know the command there. God had just created man and woman, and he said what? Be fruitful, which didn't mean grow fruit trees, right? And multiply, right? So there's a lot of fathers in this room this morning, right? Most of us in the room have taken that command and multiply, right? Happy Father's Day to those of you who took that verse seriously. Thank you. I want to talk to you today. This is really getting serious into Jesus' plan to evangelize the world. We're getting to really the pinnacle of it. And it is reproduction, multiplication, however you want to look at it, was part of his plan. Now let me just start with some statistics, because I want to get your mind thinking about how reproduction and how multiplication works or doesn't. The United States of America, not too long ago, was 70% Caucasian white Americans. Okay? Can you wrap your mind around 7 out of 10? In the very near future, 50%, 5 out of 10 of every Americans will be of the Hispanic culture. And the black and white culture will be two minorities about the same size, with other different cultures making up about 10%. Roughly 16 to 17% of America by 2050. Okay, so you say, well, that's 30 years. Oh, that's not very long. That's less than a generation, right? Less than one generation. So, as we sit here, we're on the pinnacle of a Caucasian generation and a Hispanic generation flip-flopping, while the black community stays relatively constant, okay? But it's still a minority. Why is that? Because of reproduction and multiplication. So right now in the United States, in Caucasian families, more people die than are born. It's a fact. I'm speaking in the age of the internet. You can check me. Okay? More. And among younger white couples, the plan is to have one or less children. 2 minus 1 equals, and how many children can one make? It's not hard to figure out. This isn't really bigger than like 3rd grade math. Among the black community, it's constant. It's about the same, and it's going to stay about the same. They're having, on average, 2 children per 2 people. Okay? 2, and keeps making 2, well, that's okay, right? Among the Hispanic communities, the average is 4 children per 2 people, okay? But let me even go a little bit further. You think, okay, I get that. What are you trying to say? There's going to be more Hispanics in America in 30 years? Well, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, but that's not my point. My point is I want you to understand how multiplication works. But still, with those numbers in America, we're having 1.7 children per couple. Adding everybody together, right? Now, still, it doesn't take a genius to figure out if you only have 1.7 for 2, you're still shrinking, right? So you average everybody in the population of the United States is still shrinking. If it wasn't for immigration, our population would be dropping in the United States, which is the case of most countries, okay? Except for Asian and Latin countries, which are growing quickly, okay? 1.7, and that number is going to drop, mainly because Caucasians will have less and less children as we go forward. Let me give you another statistic. So you got your mind wrapped around that too. How populations drop. How segments of people disappear. Right? Have you ever watched, I always think of a movie, don't I? Last of the Mohicans. You know why they called it that? He was the last one in that movie. You should watch that movie. It's a great movie. But disease and being driven out of their homeland did away with the Mohican Indians in northern New York. Long time ago. Long time ago. A great people. There's several. The Delaware. There's all kinds of Indians who disappeared. Okay. Let me get you to wrap your mind around this. We're almost to this point. There are almost as many Muslims in the world as Christians. Okay? Almost equal. That number is expected to flip-flop in the next few years. Why do you think? Because Muslim people are having more children than Christians. Okay? So it's a done deal. In that sense. In the sense that we have control of it by birth. By that. So, in Genesis 1:26-27, God said He created man in His own image, and male and female He created them. That to me says women are just as much created in the image of God as men. Just making a point. Okay, it's not my point, but He created them, man and woman, right? The image of God. And told us, He blessed us, and then He said, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. We did a pretty good job for a long time, right? Long time. We fill the earth. There's places in the world, Tokyo, Beijing, Mexico City, New York, LA, you go and they said, man, they really multiply and fill the earth, right? I don't know if we multiply better there or we just collect in those places. But then over in John chapter 15, verse 16, Jesus uses some very similar language. Okay? Very similar language. He says, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go forth, here it comes again, bear fruit, that your fruit should abide. Again, he's not talking about orchards or fruit trees, is he? The fruit is what? Disciples. Same language though, right? Go multiply, go fill the earth with my people, God said. Fill it up. I want worshipers. And Adam and Eve got busy, had children, and everybody's been doing it since. Jesus said, okay, I've got a plan. Now, I've taught it to you. Now go forth, bear fruit, multiply. So, last week I said when we learn the lesson of that Christ is teaching us, when we learn these lessons, we're not to be, we're never to be. I don't know if I said never, but we're never be satisfied with our first fruits. Okay, that's not enough. It's not enough just to produce fruit and just to stop. We are sent out ones. We're sent out to witness. Okay? And so I said, disciples must be brought to maturity. And the whole reason, I don't want to knock the whole fruit thing, because the reason God uses fruit is people understand fruit trees. They understand you plant a peach tree, you get what? You plant a pear tree, you get what? And it goes on, doesn't it? But if you just plant the tree in the ground and water it, that's okay. But what do you want? Fruit. You want to eat this sweet fruit that comes from it. And, you know, Harold, do y'all have fruit trees? Have y'all planted some? Have y'all had fruit from it? Awesome. Did you just cut the tree down after that?
No.
You were waiting for it.
Trigger.
Yeah, and you want more fruit, right? You're not just satisfied with so one of the things that we tend to do sometimes, if we get to the point where we're making disciples, we see them reading their Bible, maybe doing some things, praying, and that's kind of trimming the tree. But then all of a sudden, when they bear fruit, yes, we're excited. But a good disciple maker wants to see fruit and more fruit and more fruit and more fruit. He wants to see his 2 disciples make 4, make 8, make 16, make 32, make 64, make 128, make 246, make 592, okay? Joe, you're going to have to continue. You're the counter. Okay. Close. Yeah. Oh, 84. Okay. 6, 8 and 8, 16? No. Yeah. Okay. That wasn't part of my notes. I should have wrote that down, but that wasn't even part of my thought. So one thing I see is in this evangelization of the world, there's no substitute for complete victory. It's not like win the battle, win this battle, win that battle. It's total victory that Jesus was looking for. And where's the battlefield? It's the whole world. It's the whole world. There's no place that's exempt. We have not been called to hold down the fort. Okay? Jesus didn't say, hold down the fort till I come back. Just take care of your small group of believers until I come back. We were called to do what? Jesus said it, storm the gates of hell. Right? It's in this light that I think we reach what I call this pinnacle of Jesus' strategy on discipleship. It's world evangelism, and it's complete. It's continuing this reproduction. Okay? And really, it doesn't matter which group of people you're in that I was talking about. If you're a Christian, ignore all those statistics about what race or culture group we're from. We're all the same when it comes to being a Christian, and we're to be about reproducing. Okay? The problem is that, as I said a couple weeks ago maybe, statistics continue to show over and over and over that for years now, we've been reproducing at a rate of about 3 to 100. Okay? Every year in the United States, about 17 to 18% of the people die. Okay? And that's okay, because as long as we're having babies, right? But if the reproduction rate ever dropped to 3%, 3 children to every 100 people, in one generation, in 40 years, whoosh, bam, it would be, you could get any house you wanted. Real estate would be cheap. There'd be plenty of land and houses, and man, construction people would be out of business. But that's where we've been for a couple generations. So that's what's happened. 3 out of 100, 3 out of 100. And we're looking at a day and time when the majority of Christians are older than 50. It's a fact. The 2 oldest generations are the highest percentage of Christians. It's just a fact. With the oldest generation being like 70% Christian. It's huge. But they won't be here in 20 years. unless they start living to 110 or 120, which some of you could. Some of you could. I won't put it past you. But what are the chances of that? It's not going to happen. But our children in here are going to be here in 20 years, right? Hopefully my generation, most of us are still here in 20 years. Reuben, you want to be? I think we'll be here in 20 years. But we're going to be old. Right? Reuben says, I'm not getting old. Speak for yourself. I'm just facing facts, just facing facts. Like when I turned 40, there were new facts. When I turned 50, there's new facts. And I can already tell when I turn 60, there's going to be new facts. And I'm learning about being in the 80s and 90s here at the church. There's facts. But the fact is, the people who are younger than me, they're going to be here. But very small percentages of them want to follow Jesus. That's where I'm getting. A very small percentage of these last two generations want to be Jesus followers. Actually, they don't want to follow anybody. If we were Muslim or anything else, we'd be in the same boat. Our kids not wanting to follow in our footsteps. But Jesus intended, let me pull myself back in. Jesus intended for us, his disciples, to be fruitful, to reproduce. This is the critical part of all his teaching, is that we had to reproduce. And when I say reproduce, what do I mean? People like Greg know Jesus, reproduce him, to reproduce the Jesus in us and other people. And so Jesus gathered together what we call a church, or what he thought of as the church, out of people. It was people that he gathered together, the gathered ones. That was the church. So that his ministry in the Spirit, and only in the Spirit of God, would what? Be duplicated over and over and over. So in the Spirit of God, Jesus, in the disciples, in those early followers, could be reproduced and reproduced and reproduced. Over and over and over. Okay? Through them now, see this, through them, and then the ones that they produced for 2,000 years, and then you and I today, followers of Jesus today, it would continue to expand. I'm talking about Jesus' plan, until the circumference, till the whole world was brought to faith in Christ. Okay? That was the plan. Around the world. Okay? By this strategy, the conquest of the world was only a matter of time. Okay? If his followers stayed faithful to his plan. That's a big, great big if. Right? There's two words when you get into conversation about something that usually cause trouble. They're both prepositions, the word if and but. If and but. When somebody's telling you how great something they could be, and they say but, you automatically, what? Or if. If means usually something, it's dependent on something, right? So buts usually get in the way of something happening, and if gets in the way, somebody else has to do something, or something else has to happen. Right? I could tell you this morning, everyone in this room could have $100 million. If. Right? And then you fill it in, right? If. See, Jesus built into his disciples the structure of his church. It was built into them. The structure of the church was built into the disciples. And he built a strategy, a structure in them that would triumph over all the powers of the world, including death. Okay, so this structure built into the disciples had the power to overcome everything, including death. All the powers of this world could be overcome. And he said, here, let me explain it to you. It's going to start like a mustard seed. And everybody in that part of the world knew what a mustard seed was. Because if you had some mustard seed and you sneezed, it was gone. You couldn't find it, right? It's the tiniest seed. Okay? But it grows into this big, huge, tree-looking plant. Okay? And it's kind of incredible. This tiny seed that you can hardly see grows into this tree-looking herb plant. It's huge. So it started like a small grain and grew. He said it would become greater than all the others. So in this illustration, he was saying, I'm starting with me and you 12 guys. And we're like a mustard seed. But when it's finished, it's going to be greater than anything the world has ever seen. Okay? And so Jesus didn't expect. Hear me say this, because I need to be, we need to be honest about this. Jesus didn't mean that every person in the world would become a follower. He didn't mean that it would continue and multiply, and that every single person would be a follower. I believe he recognized something very realistic, that inside of man was rebellion. And that there were going to be people who rebelled against him, against God, okay? And they weren't going to change their rebellion against God. But he did see a day in the future at some point when the gospel of salvation, when his plan would come to be, and that his name would be proclaimed in every single language and culture that existed. That day has yet to come. So I have to believe the plan is still in motion. I think we would have all gone home had we taken the name of Jesus to every single tribe, every single culture, tongue, however you want to go about it. There's still over 1,000. It's great. It's been greatly reduced, but there's still over 1,000 spoken language, subculture groups that have yet to hear for the first time the name Jesus. And so I believe Jesus could see, because he's God, one day when the finality of this plan would come to be, and every person would at least have the opportunity for their culture, their language, to know Jesus. Have you ever seen those videos where they fly in a helicopter and they bring in Bibles and people for the first time, and the people go crazy over them? I mean, it's like, now these are people that have already heard, but they're getting their Bibles for the first time. Man, it might as well be $1 million being dropped out. It's an incredible thing. It's the Word of God, and usually what it is somebody has led these people, lived with these people, come to know their language, and then taken the Bible and interpreted it and printed it in their language. Usually starts with like the Gospel of John, then maybe the New Testament. But it's an incredible thing to see these videos. It's incredible. No, I don't have time. Never mind. Another time. So through that testimony, the church would someday be the church universal. I mean, technically, when we use the word Catholic, the Catholic Church is not what Christ intended, but a Catholic church is a universal church, worshiping him. But it kind of got distorted in the third verse. Anyway, we won't go there. But Jesus called for a Catholic church, but not the Catholic church. But what he meant was a universal church, a world of God worshipers. Okay? And so, but I don't remember Jesus saying, now get out there. It's going to be the easiest thing you ever did. It's going to be so easy. He did it. He said, I'll be with you always. But he didn't say it was going to be easy. Many were going to suffer. He was clear about that, even to death. And most of the disciples, that's what happened to them that we know. But no matter how great the struggles or the trials through which his people, he said, would pass, no matter how many, if you think of the battle, how many temporary skirmishes that would have to be gone through? No matter how many are lost, no matter how many are killed, let me just say it boldly, the ultimate victory of Jesus is certain. And I'll just say this. I'm pretty passionate about this, but I guarantee you that if not a single person in this room ever brings another person to Christ, Jesus will succeed still. That's a fact. But then we would have lost the privilege and the blessing it is to be part of the victory. There's veterans in this room, I know. And some of you fought in battle, I'm sure. But I don't think when you went to battle, you went over and you dug a hole and you got down in it and said, let me know when it's over. I don't think they'd let you. Some sergeant would be fixing that, right? I guess. But how would you feel if you could? You know, would you be proud of your service? Proud of what you know? You'd be like, wish I could really be part of this parade and this excitement. And I say war, it could be a lot of different things. We could hide, stick our head in a hole, and then it's over. What part of the celebration? Where's the joy? There's not. And it's the same for this battle that we're in for the hearts and souls of lost people. Why just sit in these comfortable blue chairs when you can get out and do something about it? Right? There's a war going on. Right? I was, you can compare this to a lot of different things. There was a storm last Sunday, and we were in our car in Upper Lake Highlands, just north of Walnut Hill, where they said the winds got up to 85 miles an hour. I mean, it felt like war. my girls were a little upset. But there was big old fist-sized pieces of hail coming down. I thought the windshields were going to break. I saw a whole basketball goal, the bottom thing go right in front of our car. I was sitting there thinking, and I didn't have to do this because the storm ended it was over in a couple minutes. But I was sitting there thinking, Greg, what are you going to do? There's a car in front of me, a car beside me. I didn't know whether to pull up in the yard and but I was thinking, are you just going to sit here and let the windshield break out? But then it stopped. But at a point in every struggle, you have to figure out what you're going to do, right? You have to figure out if you're going to be part of it. I mean, people in battle sometimes got to decide, am I going to sit here and die? Or am I going to die trying to live? Or will I live? I mean, there's several things that can happen there. And I gave you some incredible statistics today. And I hope the one you don't leave here is, well, why people need to have more babies. That's the last thing I want you to leave here today with. What I want you to leave here today is, if we don't start bringing more people to Jesus, our church is going to shrink in America. And we are going to be a very small minority in America. I'm not the only one saying this. Look at the number of empty chairs in this room, and it's everywhere. Yeah, there's some mega churches that are packed, and there's some expressions of the church that are packed, but most aren't. 96% of all Baptist churches, and this is the figure I have, are less than 200 people. Okay? 70-something% is less than 100 people. 70-something% of all Baptist churches look just like this on Sunday. They got about 30 or 40 people worshiping every Sunday, and they all have the same history. They'll all tell you, but you should have seen this place back in the 70s and the 80s when you couldn't get a seat in here. And so I'm almost 56 years old, and I'm telling you this. There won't be another generation of a 56-year-old guy to come in here and be able to tell this story. And it won't for hundreds of churches in Dallas. Because you know why? Because those buildings will be gone. Why? I feel like I'm petitioning you with the word. I feel like I'm putting on your hearts, and I feel like other people do, the necessity, the desire. And I'm not beating it. I'm really not trying. I'm trying to bring us all to some enlightenment But the fact is, in most of the statistics I've given you, they're going to happen no matter how many times they print them. It's just the way it's going to be. I could go into it. I could go into something. I will use this. This may not be politically correct, but I'm going to use it. Because the fact that the white population has decided to have less than one child per couple, is that being disobedient to God? Not directly. But do we owe it to our ancestors to have children? I'm not talking about, there's reasons some people can't, and it's always been that way. But do we not owe it to those that came before us to have children in their names? I mean, Janelli will tell you, my name's not Segura, it's Navarro. She may not anymore, but she used to correct. Why did she tell me that? Why did Janelli tell me that? Because she's proud that her name is Navarro, right? We're all proud of our names. We're all proud of our heritage, that which we came from. The only way to carry on that heritage is to be fruitful and multiply. So whether that was a politically correct example or not, let me take it into our heritage as followers of Jesus. Knowing that our numbers are being depleted, knowing that the generations before us who were committed are going away, what do we do about that? Do we just sit and say, do we let ourselves die out? I mean, there's one thing that makes it a sin and makes it wrong, but there's a whole nother that we sometimes have to look at ourselves and say, hey, where's your heritage? I think maybe, again, it may not be politically correct, but I always speak to diverse crowds. I think maybe this pride that the Latin culture has in their family and their heritage and their names is the reason that they multiply and have more children. They want to see a fruitfulness in their lineage and grandchildren. Now, my family's doing pretty good. I've had 5 grandchildren in 6 years. And I haven't even read this verse to my kids. They're doing pretty good, right? When I look at my grandchildren, I'm so proud. They're part of me. I look at my children, children, and I see like my son's face and my grandson. I see my daughter's face and her daughter, and it's a blessing. Many of you know this blessing. But when I hear stories of what my daughter is doing with her children to help them know Jesus, and in their church to help other people's children know Jesus, I feel that same pride. I want that for all of you too. I want that for you with your children, with your grandchildren, with your neighbors, with your friends. I want you to have that feeling that when someone that you brought to Jesus produces a child, that you feel that pride. And I want you to have that feeling that one day you were listening or you're having coffee or whatever with someone that someone you brought to Christ, that someone that was brought to Christ by someone you brought to Christ, and they say something, and you remember saying it, you remember telling them that story in the Bible and telling them that, and then that person 2 or 3 generations down says it. You know what you're not going to do? I guarantee you. You're not going to say, well, I told them that. No, what's going to happen is you're going to go, wow. Wow. In your mind, you're going to say, I remember when I taught so-and-so that, and they must have taught so-and-so because so-and-so has it. You're just going to be proud. You're just going to be proud. So, you know, the victory is certain. If you really study these things, these trends, you follow Jesus from Jerusalem, you got to kind of watch when's it going to come back to Jerusalem, because I believe someday it will. Because the hardest Muslim people in the world are surrounding Jerusalem. So one day we're going to be taking on the task of bringing Jesus to those places, right? And it comes back. But Jesus moved west, right? His movement. Moved in through Syria, of all places, into Europe. Northern Africa, right? Spread over into the United States of America, right? Down into Latin America. And now it's growing like crazy in Asia. There are more Christians in China than the United States now. Now they got almost 2 billion people. So the percentage is still lower percentage, but that's a lot of Christians in a place where it's still illegal to be a Christian. And they still mow down house churches every once in a while. The largest churches in the world are now in Latin America, in Korea. Latin America and Korea. So the largest churches are in Latin America and Korea. They're Asian and Latin, Hispanic Latin. So Jesus is moving around, right? He's moving through Asia back to Jerusalem. Time is coming. Time is coming. So I say that in that, do we just think, okay, he's been through the United States. Do we just say, you know what? The older generations did what they were supposed to do. Leave it to the kids. There'll just be fewer churches. I can't go there. I can't go there. You know why? Because of the same people I just mentioned. My children and my grandchildren. If we don't continue this, there's going to come a time in the United States when our grandchildren don't have the opportunities we had. They already don't have the opportunities we had. They're already feeling the discomfort of maybe being the only ones in their school that talk about Jesus or talk about the Bible. They're already feeling that, and that's even now here in the Bible Belt. I'm going to finish, and I'm not. This is going to be where I'm going to stop. But I had lunch with a missionary friend that's in Montana now that we were in Costa Rica with in language school. Did I say Montana? I said Montana. They're in Montana now. You ever been to Montana or seen pictures of Montana? Muy bonito. It is one pretty place. Beautiful place to live. You know what they don't have much of in Montana? Besides people? Churches. Jesus is not a big word in Montana. So they're there, Brian and Felicia Henderson, with 2 little, Skylar graduated high school, right? And Sydney is the girl's age. And so they're in Montana, been there 4 years, and actually the North American Mission Board pulled his commission because it just wasn't working out in this city that they're in. But she got a job teaching, and he's a maintenance person at the high school, just so they can stay there and continue the work. Because the mission board said, 4 years, that's enough. So they're staying there. They figured out a way to live there. But I was having lunch with him, and it is hard work. And that's in the United States of America. And And his wife, so when I say school, she's the principal of the school. So you think, oh, they got a Christian school though. Yeah, but there's like 30-something people, kids in it. So it's a little bitty Christian school. They only go to 6th grade too. But anyway, what I'm saying is, we're insulated. We don't feel it as much down here in the South. But it's coming. It's coming. But that's no reason to stop. That's no reason to be, can you imagine being one of the 12? And looking at the prospect of success? Well, God showed them, though, pretty quick. What? Peter, 5,000? That's a pretty sweet day. So, well, maybe that wasn't a good example. But let's just talk about maybe 200 years later when they were feeding them to the lions in Rome. So, the prospects of evangelizing Rome in those days when it had been illegalized, and if you got caught, you were thrown in with the lions, and the lion always won. How do you think they felt? So we're not there yet. But I think we're at a point in time where we can raise the call. And the call is not to retreat. The call is not to hold down the fort. The call is to attack. To go forth. To get up out of the comfortableness of our air-conditioned sanctuaries and share Jesus. And so this is a pinnacle in this message, in this series. This is where we get down to the real work. It was all just great. If you were a strategist, all I've said before were just good strategies for success. Good strategies for success. If we do this, if we do this. But now, all of a sudden, it's the but and the if. And so, are we going to be a but? Yeah. And I like the way that worked out. Dallas would have been evangelized, but those Christians didn't see the need. Are we going to be the if? Dallas could be evangelized if those faithful followers in Dallas will get out of their seats and go do it. And it's for sure. Right? Amen. I'm going to stop there. I hope, you didn't get a lot of my sermon. You got more of what God put on my heart. But this kind of even materialized as I looked at you this morning, you fathers who've fathered children and carried on the lineage. And, I think sometimes in our culture, it's going to get worse, this is going to get worse. This is why there's this movement. That having many children is somehow looked down on in our culture today. Why did that happen? How could that have happened? Something so beautiful as having babies is a negative to so much of our population who says, well, we might have one, but we're probably not going to have any. And people look and think that's a great thing. So I think that kind of moves into this thought of reproducing ourselves as Christians. The world would rather us just keep our mouth shut and not reproduce. You can be a Christian, just do it in your own buildings, in your own home. Don't bring it into our parks and our restaurants and our schools and wherever. Just you're okay if you don't reproduce. So there's this stigma to reproduction, right? How many times do you think I've said reproduction in church today? A lot. I've been in churches where somebody would have got on to me afterwards. A deacon would have said, Greg, I don't know if you ought to say that word so much in church. Because they wouldn't even be getting what I'm talking about. They'd be stuck on that word. But I'm just going to keep going here because I've kind of put my foot into it. And let me just say, because this will make you remember it. I don't think anybody can't hear this in here. Reproduction is a good thing. It's a good thing. That's why men and women, when they're together being intimate, performing the act of reproduction, maybe not reproducing every time, but that's why it's a good thing between a man and a woman. Because God created us to reproduce. Don't ever get caught up into this trend in our country, in our way of thinking, that reproduction is somehow not a beautiful, God-given thing, because it is. So whatever you get from what I said today, whatever particular rabbit trail or whatever you pick, what I'm getting to is, as Christians, if there's one of you and you produce another one, that's way beyond what most Christians ever do. If there's one of you and you reproduce 2 or 3, and let's just take it to the couple situation and take it in where the children image comes. If a couple, if a family, if 2 of you reproduce 4 or 8, you have done more for the kingdom than our institution has done the last 100 years in the way we've reproduced. One more illustration. And this is an indictment on the church today. This is where we're heading. So, if a family goes down to the playground where other people's children are playing and brings them all home, let me give you the number, and there's 20 people on the playground, how many children are in their house? They go to the playground, take the 20 children home and put them in their house. How many children do they have in their house? 20. How many children have they produced? Still 0, right? They went and took. If I take Maya and Janelli home with me today, I'll have 2 more children, but I will not have produced any more children than I have, right? It's called gathering. You can gather up all the kids you want, but you still don't have any more that are yours. If a church gathers 20 people from this church, and 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 20, I did that 5 times, they have 100 people in their church, right? That would fill all these seats. How many new Christians will we have reproduced if we go get 100 people to come here? How many new Christians? 0. So a church that grows by gathering is not growing the church. So here's what we need to do. We need to get busy reproducing Christians. We need to fill the seats, if possible, with people that we have shared Jesus with. I almost got 2 Sylvias in Ruben's room this morning. They came here yesterday and got some food. Y'all all met them. They were here yesterday. Grandma Sylvia and remember Vanessa? They were at the back door, and they came in, and I said, your mother speaks only Spanish. She said, yes. I go, we have a Spanish class. Y'all come in. And I don't know why, but they left. But anyway, I don't know. I don't know why I said that, other than that would have, I think I know. I'll say it later. I think ella está católico, entonces. I think she was afraid to come in. Anyway. Yeah, I know, it would have been good. I should have just got him in here and then told him. But I just realized that. So I'm going to let you go. I think you got the message today. I think I've been off point a lot. Gave you a lot of funny things to talk about at lunch anyway. And maybe some interesting things too. And maybe you're going to go to lunch day and say, I better learn Spanish. And that's not the point I was trying to make. But God bless you guys. Happy Father's Day to everyone here. We're going to take our offering there. We're going to do something special just here in a moment. I'm going to ask all of those in the church to come forward. Carla is fighting through some battles in some medical situations, and I have asked her if she would come and let us pray over her today. So we're going to take our offering, and then Amber, why don't we, instead of the Good Father, let's go into a time where we go into instruments and give us some time to pray and then finish with Good Father. Would that be good? Okay, so let's do that. Carla, if you'll